So hello to everybody. We already have like 76 people here. That's fantastic. It's January. For those of you who don't know me, most of you do, I'm Lisa Herrick and started the group in 2017. I often say hello at the beginning of these meetings. So you'll see me now and then, but the newsletter, I usually am the person that composes the newsletter. Sometimes I have help from some of my co-leaders, but you'll get a newsletter almost every week and it's packed with information. So just try to remember to read the newsletter. If you don't see it, it's going into your spam because we use MailChimp. Because with 1,600 people getting the newsletter, we have to use MailChimp and that will often go to spam. So if you're not seeing the newsletter every week, go to your spam, look for it. It always says 31st Street and then it has a headline. Just move it into your inbox so you keep getting it. I often start these with just like a little inspiration. And this week, really the inspiration is all of you. That is the inspiration. We started about 2 weeks ago, something called our commitment to democracy. And it was just an idea that actually came from one of our long-term members. And the idea was to start the year with some concrete requests, not just we're going to be doing lots of things, help out, donate, but to create teams that relate to everything that we're doing and to literally ask people to kind of put your action where your mouth is now and to think now about the kinds of things you want to do throughout the year. Not that you can't change your mind, not that you can't join more things later, but that you would think ahead and decide now or soon, what do I want to do? Do I want to save dates for canvassing and or save, commit myself to co-hosting 2 or 3 times and or making sure I have a budget of donating and then deciding when and how to donate? We're going to have fundraisers throughout the year. We don't know exactly how many, but you can sort of say to yourself, I'm going to commit to co-host at least 3 fundraisers and I'll just pick the ones I'm most interested in. Whatever you want to do, you can sign up for a state team. We have various state teams. I'll list them in my newsletter. So if you're particularly interested in a state, you can join a team and keep apprised of what that team is doing. They might be quiet one month, they might be busy another month, but you can belong to a smaller group than the 1,600 and feel like you are getting to know some other members and you'll get to know the leader of that state team. But in any case, I just wanted to let you all know that we have put that, effort into the last 2 newsletters, asking people to sign up, and the response has been really amazing. I mean, people are like, yes, I'm going to sign up for the Montana team. Yes, I'm signing up for letter writing. I've already written 100 letters. I mean, the response has just been really wonderful. And the response has also been that people really like that idea. They like the idea of getting very concrete about being active and setting intention. Setting intention is a buzz phrase in the social science world these days, but it actually really works. If you set your intention, you're more likely to do something. So we are borrowing that idea to set your intention and write things down, save the dates, write what your pledge is, write what your donation budget is, just write it down somewhere, put it on your refrigerator, and you will be more likely to follow through. Anyway, thank you for responding, and you'll have many, many more opportunities to do that. But that is my inspiration for the week because the group is just like off to an amazing start. And it's going to be a long year, but with all of you, we are going to keep our sanity. So yay, Jim.
Okay, so sorry. I'm setting my intention. Anyway, I'm Jim Shelton, the political analyst, retired epidemiologist, and thanks for that inspiration as usual. As my want, I'm going to show some slides to get us going, to make the case of what we want to be doing today. Everything okay with this?
Yes.
Okay. So jumping right in, I'd like to start with our investment approach. This isn't everything, but there are always a few new people who are not familiar with kind of the way we operate. This doesn't capture all of it, but we especially look for underlooked things. Timing is very important during the year, as you'll hear. And the big thing for us is long-term infrastructure. So more on that. But also we want to win. I hope you do too. Hope you can see this also. One piece of data, again, epidemiologist wants to show some data, which is, this is something called the Michigan Consumer Sentiment Survey, very big in the economist world. And you may know that, of course, that economy is doing very well, but nobody knows it, or most people don't know it. But this is a really good sign that shows that at last, the consumer is beginning to see that the economy is improving both for the overall and for themselves. So that's very good for us, guys. Now, returning to something we just finished. Our honest news work with Courier Newsroom happily has come to a successful fruition. We reached our goal. In fact, we exceeded it, $120,000. So hooray. And I said, thank you for doing this. And just wanted to tell you, they're telling me that they are actively recruiting and they're hoping they're going to get this, what's called this content organizer for the anti-propaganda effort by Courier next month. And then they'll be making things better in Pennsylvania. All right, now turning to our 4 pillars, just to remind you what they are. And they're so important this time of year. So one of them is honest media, which we've already done one fundraiser for. And I will tell you, we're in fundraising season, folks. And that's because there's so much to do. And now is the time when it has the most impact. So that's grassroots groups, both for organizing and also for voter registration and Democratic state parties. Now, the world and the way it is the Democratic Party, Biden, the major Democratic groups, the major candidates, they're all doing really well in funding. These folks, not so much. So this is why it's our leverage to weigh in now. And there's a lot to do, as I'll tell you, and that's one reason why we're continuing to move right along with doing this fundraising. And we have this metaphor we like to use that they're the 3-legged stool of candidates, party, and grassroots. Okay. So now turning to the map, and this changes a lot depending upon, what comes across. But we have our priorities, and we have maybe 8 states where we might really want to be intervening in one way or another. Pennsylvania is our biggest priority. But a lot of this has to do with Biden, though I do think Biden's in a very good position to win. But, that's one reason Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania are up here, also North Carolina. We'll be talking about the Senate, and then so Montana and Arizona and Ohio are particularly important. So the way we want to support these things is by supporting grassroots groups and selectively Democratic parties. So Democratic parties, state Democratic parties, particularly in Michigan, Arizona, and Montana, we're told by our colleagues at SPAN, are particularly in need of support. So we'll have to get to them in due course. Now, okay, so now I'm going to talk about North Carolina specifically, and we have our great speaker, Jessica, to give us a lot more detail. I don't want to steal her thunder, but a little repetition isn't necessarily bad. People may not know Biden only lost by less than 0.5%, and in 2020, and there are 16 electoral votes in North Carolina. It is a purple state. People win statewide, not that infrequently, and that is included in the past. The governor, attorney general, we need to keep that blue, but we have new candidates. So that's a hugely important with liberal Supreme Court justice, one key House race. So, okay, it's only one House race, but we need to keep it because we know every House seat is precious. Flip 3 or 4 and it's a different ball game. So that's another reason for North Carolina. We want to turn the legislature so it'll be veto proof. So if we have a Democratic governor, they can hold the Republicans at bay. There is a 2026 Senate race that we want to be preparing for with voter registration and organizing. Here's the other thing, though, which is that demography continues to work for us, in my opinion, in North Carolina. More and more people come to North Carolina. Many of them are younger people, people that would vote our way, but also importantly, the North Carolina Democrats, both statewide and in the key county of Mecklenburg, which is where Charlotte is, and is 1/8 of the population. They're all newly invigorated. Mecklenburg has been performed poorly, but if they can change, it'll make a huge difference. And lastly, we feel like we have a really good opportunity with Jessica and with these grassroots groups, as you'll hear, to make a big difference. Okay, now I'm going to shift just a little bit now, which is to talk about the U.S. Senate. My view is, again, looking for zigging when other people are zagging a bit. I think there's not nearly as much focus on the U.S. Senate as there should be. Now, why is that? Because it's so much depends upon whether or not we have a Democratic trifecta. I think prospects are actually very good. Maybe I'll say quite good. How's that? To win the presidency and the House. But if we do that and we don't win the Senate or retain the Senate, and then we've lost West Virginia basically, right? So, it's kind of like it's such a huge difference. Kind of like, otherwise we got the likes of these people down our throat, Lindsey Graham and all these characters, just making trouble if they have the majority in the Senate. So as I look around, I see money going to candidates at the marquee level. I don't see necessarily grassroots groups and other kinds of groups weighing in for the key seats in Ohio and in Montana, where we have very good candidates who I think have a decent prospect to win, but I don't see nearly enough attention to go there. So I actually think that we do have a really good opportunity in Montana, which I'll describe, actually, to move the needle. That's partly, let's go ahead and shift to Montana, because here are the reasons why I think, and reason number one is tester. And if you sort of rank the U.S. House race, Senate races rather, and likelihood of winning them, and yes, we have some vulnerabilities and so forth. The 50th seat, the rubber seat, if you will, is a tester's seat. Now, he's a very good candidate. He's won before, and I think he has a good prospect if he gets help. There's also a very good competitive U.S. House seat of the 1st District with a very good Montanan, Monica Tranel, if we can find a way to support her. They have governor's race, they have legislature races. But here's the thing. If we can find a way, which is what we're advocating by supporting grassroots groups in Montana, that we can support all of this. And the other advantage of Montana is, money goes longer, a lot better than it does in New York or suburban Virginia and so forth. And again, we have by delving down and due diligence, we really feel we have some really good grassroots groups in Montana that we can support. Okay, here he is, number 50. So what are we proposing? We're proposing to do a joint fundraiser for North Carolina and for Montana. And in North Carolina, we want to support both the C3 organizations. Those are the tax deductible organizations that can do nonpartisan voter registration, but they can do it in places that will help support our values. Let's put it that way. The C4 organizations are much effective. They have more latitude. They do more of the organizing. And we want to have one fundraiser for that and one fundraiser for Montana. Similarly, same kind of groups. Now, the reason I'm doing this, having two at a time rather than just one and then another one, is we don't have world enough in time. And I think by having a choice so that people, people who want the tax deductions, they can do the C3s. We'll have one link for the C3s. We'll have one link for the C4s. If people just want to help support North Carolina, they can use the customize and they can support North Carolina. Or some people, God love them, may want to support everything. And they can, but we need to have two links because the C3s have to be segregated from the C4s. I do foresee that we will have 2 or 3 more for the grassroots groups, fundraisers, maybe a couple of fundraisers for state Democratic parties. And then later on, not that far into the election season, we will be supporting some actual candidates with fundraising. But it'll most likely not be US House or Senate, but rather the state legislature down ballot candidates, both to improve the legislature, but also because we think we'll get an updraft by supporting them to support the in states like Montana and North Carolina that will help the overall effort up ballot, as we like to call it. Okay, and the total is $160,000. And I know we're asking a lot of you in a way, because we're asking you to be, stand in and we'll have all these fundraisers. You don't have to do all the fundraisers, but this is an opportunity of a lifetime in a way. So we're hoping people will take this seriously and think about their tax deductible donations as well. Of course, to do this, we need people to be a co-host. We're already reaching out. We're already finding some co-hosts, but we're going to need about 25 or 30, hopefully. And this is just a list of the groups. Now, Jessica is with this organization, Put NC First, which is the donor table, and she'll tell you what that is. One of the reasons we find this attractive is because these are the organizations they think will be particularly effective to work in North Carolina, including on the C3 side, specifically for voter registration in Mecklenburg County. So I think I've sort of said everything I want to say, other than just to introduce you to this very astute professional with a really nice smile, Jessica Laurenz.
Thank you, Jim. And hey, everyone. I'm so glad to see you and so grateful for your time this afternoon, and really grateful for all you have done and all you're going to do this year to support the work in North Carolina. I'm raising 10 and 8-year-old boys here, so this is very personal to me, but I'm really just deeply grateful for all the people across the country who are leaning in and trying to help turn North Carolina blue. I'm going to talk a little bit, as Jim noted, about what the landscape is in North Carolina right now, and a little bit about the plan of the C3 and C4 side in the state, and then we'll leave plenty of time for questions. But y'all give me 1 second to just get this up, and then we'll get going. As Jim said, I am the executive director of an organization called Put NC First. And what we do in North Carolina is that we're a collaboration of in-state donors and political operatives, and also national investments, who are working to build long-term progressive political power in North Carolina. And so I help manage the 501c3 and 501c4 infrastructure in the state, making sure that that all the organizations that are doing election work and working on issue advocacy and doing voter registration are working off the same plan, that plan is strategic and makes sense, and that we're able to resource it at the level it needs to be resourced to be effective. So that's the role that I play in North Carolina. And people often ask me, sort of, what's the difference between what you do and what the candidates do or what the party does? And so I like to start usually with this quick explanation that in North Carolina, and this might look different from state to state, but in North Carolina, we think of our lane, and the candidates think of their lane, and the party thinks of its lane in this way, that the grassroots organizations, the C3 and C4s, are primarily responsible in state for a couple of things. The first is we work to expand the electorate in North Carolina, right? To grow the base of Democratic voters in state through voter registration and get out the vote work that happens year in and year out in the state. And if you think about people who are who've never voted before or who are really low propensity voters, they're not always going to be motivated by a candidate or by the party, but they could be motivated by an issue or an organization that's working in their community. And so we can sort of help provide that motivation to vote that's separate from candidates. So electorate expansion is one of our top responsibilities. We also play a big role in defining who the Republicans are in state and making sure people understand what they're doing to North Carolina, their public statements, their policies. Day in and day out, we're trying to make sure voters know what's going on in our state legislature and nationally when it comes to what Republicans are up to. And we hold a lot of the long-term strategy work in the state because I'm here not just for one election cycle, right? But I have actually been in this role for almost a decade. And so we're thinking not just about 2024, but all the way out to 2030. Okay, so speaking of that, this is a summary of what North Carolina is going to look like between now and 2030. So as Jim said, as we're thinking about this year, our big priorities are to try to deliver North Carolina to President Biden. We have an open governor's race. All 170 of our state legislative seats are up, and we have a statewide partisan Supreme Court race. And then as we move to next year, the thing of most interest to all of you, right, is that we will have a U.S. Senate race. And what I really like to emphasize is there's really no path to a progressive Democratic U.S. Senate that does not run through North Carolina. So everything that we do in 2024 will hopefully build capacity and set us up to deliver that U.S. Senate seat 2 years from now as well. That happens again in 28. We have another U.S. Senate pickup opportunity in North Carolina. The other thing that happens in 28 in North Carolina is it's going to be our first opportunity to recapture our state Supreme Court from Republicans. And that will hopefully give us an opportunity to litigate and get back to a place where we can have fair state legislative maps and then win the state legislature in 2030 so that we sort of get out of the mess that we're in at the state level. But for the next 3 cycles, it's really about trying to win statewide. And you know, the outlook for that is that North Carolina is an incredibly closely divided purple state. You can see here how our electorate breaks down. So this is current registered voters in North Carolina. There are about 1.3 million Democratic base voters, Democrats who show up every cycle. And there's about 1.5 million Republican base voters. And then both Democrats and Republicans have a lot of sporadic voters, people who show up, you know, maybe for the presidential year, but not for the midterm year. And then we have a lot of people, about 1 million, just right in the middle. So all of our elections, you know, are going to be very close, and we win and lose elections sometimes by, you know, 401 votes out of 5 million cast. And that outlook will, you know, it'll probably look like that throughout the rest of the decade. But, you know, I know that North Carolina is starting to get the reputation of like Democrats' white whale, right? Like we keep trying to win in North Carolina, but we just keep falling a little bit short. I assure you that is bothering no one more than it is bothering me. But I want to bring you guys 4 reasons why we really think there's a lot of reason for optimism for our ability to win North Carolina this year. I want to say first that the combination of the presidential race and the governor's race this cycle is going to give us a little bit of extra oomph, and we think it can help to increase turnout. Our likely Republican nominee for governor is a very Trump-like candidate. You can think that it's likely to mirror a lot of sort of what happened in the Pennsylvania governor's race in 2022. And so even though we're going to work really hard to make sure people are motivated to turn out and vote for President Biden. If that's not working for people, we have a secondary option, which is to convince them to turn out to vote against this really extreme, unqualified candidate that we have running for governor. The second reason is a lot of our ability to move persuadable voters depends on what we can do in terms of performance in our suburban areas, which are growing and diversifying and changing. And the abortion issue is really working for us in those places. And again, our Republican nominee for governor is on the record saying that if he's elected and has a willing legislature, he will do a total and complete abortion ban in North Carolina, which of course voters here are very opposed to. So we have that going for us. I think third, and Jim alluded to this, we really have not yet realized the promise of North Carolina's electorate and the demographic and population growth that we're seeing in state. And that opportunity grows by the day. I think 60 people a day move to Raleigh, where I'm from, and I think it's even more moving to Charlotte. So as North Carolina continues to grow and change, we have a lot of work to do to make sure we're capturing those voters. And then the last reason is, at this moment, the ecosystem in North Carolina, from the Democratic Party, which is operating under new leadership, to the C3 and C4 partners, which are bigger and more diverse and stronger than I think they've ever been in state, it's really operating at a high level of alignment. We are all on the same plan. We are working really well together. The communication is really strong. And I think that sets us up in a way that allows us to take advantage of these opportunities. So I want you to kind of go into 2024 being excited about North Carolina for these reasons. And then as we think about the year, these are going to be our goals from the perspective of put NC first and our partners on the ground, the four things that we'll be primarily focused on: winning the presidential, winning the governor's race, breaking the Republican supermajority in the state legislature, and winning our statewide state Supreme Court race. And this is how we view our responsibility, right? So the party's going to have its lane, the candidates are going to have their lane. This is what the organizations that I help to support and fund will be primarily focused on and responsible for. And I'm going to talk about two of those in more detail, and then we'll take questions. But the first is, we're going to carry most, if not all, of the voter registration in the state. We are going to hold a significant portion of the direct voter contact, the door-to-door canvassing and phone banking, and that the sort of massive effort that it takes to turn people out to vote. We'll be working hard to define our opposition early, and that for us means a lot of communication to voters about Mark Robinson and the state legislative Republicans that are running with him. And then we also fund and support a lot of election protection and voting rights work to make sure that once we turn all those folks out, that they don't fall victim to suppression or intimidation when they get there. So let me hone in just real quickly on the first two programs, give you a flavor of what we'll be doing, and then I'll take questions. So the first is voter registration. There are, we estimate, about 800,000 eligible, unregistered progressive voters in North Carolina. About 20% of those 800,000 people, and remember, this is a state where we are losing elections by less than 75,000 votes. So that's so 800,000 is more than enough to get us where we need to be. About 20% of those folks live in Raleigh and Charlotte, our sort of primary metro areas, but a lot of them are also in rural parts of the state because we have a very diverse rural community in North Carolina that has a lot of Black and brown voters living in our rural counties. So our partners are out now on the ground collecting voter registration applications. We have set a goal this year of collecting 190,000 forms between 2023 and the October deadline this year. And we're well on our way. We did about 40,000 forms in 2023. So programs are going well and meeting goal, and they're about to expand dramatically as we have moved into the election year. And as Jim said, most of the resources that we use to pay for these programs are nonpartisan and tax deductible. They're focused on registering voters of color and young voters all across the state. And then the second, the sort of big work to knock on doors and turn out the large number of sporadic voters that we have in North Carolina. Just to give you a sense of the scale of this, we knocked on about 1 million doors in 2022 because there wasn't a lot of national investment in North Carolina's turnout program. And what happens when we're running programs that are that small is that millions of Democrats stay home, and then we lose elections by, you know, Sherry Beasley lost North Carolina by about 120,000 votes. So this year we've worked really hard to build a plan and be serious about how we're going to get to scale. And we think we need to knock about 3.8 million doors across 48 counties in order to be operating at the size we need to turn out the voters that we need to win statewide. And so our partners on the ground in North Carolina will be carrying a lot of this. And then they'll be backed up, right, by big national programs that come in to get us the rest of the way. Groups like Planned Parenthood and League of Conservation Voters and others. So the organizations that Jim listed at the beginning, Down Home, Siembra, Carolina Federation, they're running year-round organizing programs and can turn that capacity into an army of people who will be out knocking doors, hopefully starting June 1st and running all the way through Election Day. So we feel really good about this plan, and we can pay attention to what the Biden campaign is doing in North Carolina and move our programs to fill gaps based off of what we're seeing, right? So our expectation is the Biden team will be in places like Raleigh and Charlotte and Durham, where there are large populations of Democratic voters. We can focus on more suburban and rural parts of the state. If that turns out to not be true, we can come in and fill gaps just depending on what we're seeing. So I'll stop there. That is generally what we are thinking in terms of our priorities and plans and the landscape in North Carolina. And I'll turn it back to, I'm not sure who I'm supposed to turn it to moderate questions, but I'm happy to take some.
It's actually, hey, Jessica, this is Aaron. I am the membership person at 31st Street Swing Left and also the Q&A moderator. So I will be happy to do that. So if anybody has a question, I invite you, please put it in the chat and I will forward that to Jessica. I actually have one that I thought maybe you could speak to. I'm not sure if everybody here is as familiar with Mark Robinson, who is the Republican candidate for governor. I just noted a couple of things that he has said, including that Martin Luther King Jr. was a communist and not a very good pastor, that women's natural role is to be led around by men, that homosexuals and LGBT people are filth. And I mean, just to give you a sense of like how this person might motivate liberals to show up to make sure he doesn't become governor. So I wonder if you could just kind of highlight how out there he is and why you think that might be a good turnout motivator.
Yeah, absolutely, Aaron. So he is currently the lieutenant governor. He was elected in 2020 to that role after making a speech at the Greensboro City Council meeting about gun control. And that speech catapulted him into sort of the national right-wing consciousness. And then he ran statewide for lieutenant governor and won in 2020. So he is inexperienced, unqualified, and incredibly extreme. He is a Christian nationalist, MAGA to the core. He is also African American. And so we have a lot of sort of racial and class and religious dynamics that are going to show up in our governor's race. in a really interesting way. But you are completely right, Aaron. Every time he opens his mouth, he gives me a fundraising talking point. We have an 800-page opposition research book on him. That's how many pages it takes to catalog everything he said on social media, everything he says at events. So yes, I do think for young people, for liberals, but even for people who just don't like this sort of MAGA bullying type of politics, is going to be a pretty motivational race for them.
Great. And that might actually answer one of the other questions, which was, how do we motivate young people who may not feel like voting? I have a feeling just letting them know a couple of his crazy things might help in that direction. Another question that came up was, does North Carolina face some of those disenfranchisement laws that were passed in Georgia to discourage people from voting? I'm sure you're aware of those.
We do. I mean, North Carolina is a southern state, and so we are seeing really, really surgical attacks on the right of Black and brown voters to cast a ballot here, and we have for many generations. The most recent ones, for starters, we're going to have voter ID implemented in a general election for the first time this year. So we are incorporating into all of our programs education about voter ID and helping to get people ready for that requirement, because that is going to be new for us. There also last year, I guess, were a lot of attacks on vote by mail, just efforts to make that more difficult after 2020. And we have same-day voter registration here that you can utilize during our early vote period, and the Republicans are constantly trying to mess with that, and that's particularly problematic for young people who are on college campuses, because they do a lot of same-day. They utilize same-day registration a lot. So our programs are adapting, adjusting. It's nothing new for us. It just means that we have to do a lot more sort of voter education and watching at the polls.
Okay, great. Another question was, what about the other counties that were indicated in white on your map? Is there anything for them?
Yeah, so that doesn't necessarily mean, just because there weren't colored in doesn't mean that we won't knock doors there, but those are the places where our partner organizations have the most capacity and where they'll be able to run the biggest programs. We're in the process now of thinking through how to expand to a larger number of counties and how to utilize the capacity that comes into state from national organizations to help us do that. So it's not to say that we don't prioritize those or that we won't, but we're going to start by making sure, like, the absolute number one priority is we have to have programs on the ground in these 48 counties.
Great. Okay, another question. And this may be for you or for someone else, but do people in the DC area serve North Carolina better by fundraising or by coming to North Carolina to join voter registration drives, canvassing, etc.? I mean, my feeling is both and, we will definitely be planning stuff in North Carolina, but I think right now, I think the highest impact might be by fundraising, but what's your take?
Yeah, I would agree, Aaron. It's a both and. And what I would say is the early resources help us get our programs in the right kind of shape to make sure that when you get here, your volunteer experience is as effective and good as possible, right? So right now, our partners are opening offices, hiring field organizers, getting people trained and ready to go, so that when we start voter contact in earnest in June, we're running the best possible programs that we can. So early money and late manpower. I would love both.
Wonderful. And someone in the chat asked this, and maybe it bears reiterating. Can you explain exactly where the money is going when it's being donated?
I can, absolutely. So the donor table operates in this way. We have two pooled funds, a C3 fund and a C4 fund. And I raise a significant amount of money in state. So all my operating costs and everything that it takes to kind of run the infrastructure, that gets paid for by money we raise in state. And in fact, I've already raised it for 2024. We're done with that. So everything that comes into the pooled funds from here on out is going to move right back out for program on the ground. And as Jim mentioned earlier when he talked, one of the advantages of doing it this way is I can make sure that that money moves as part of a collective plan, right? So everyone that I'm granting to is part of this sort of big plan that I talked about, either the voter registration plan or the door knocking plan, and is working in coordination with the other groups. And then we're doing a lot of quality control and accountability and assessment of those groups as we go through. It's not in a punitive way, but just in a way of like, let's make sure we're doing this well. And then after every election, we do an analysis of what worked, what didn't work, and we can make collective changes so we can be better next time.
Great. Well, this has just been a fantastic presentation. I'm sure everyone will want to give you a big hand. And already I see a lot of people chiming in on the chat that they are already getting excited about donating. There's a lot of wonderful activity going on in the chat, and we don't have time to do all of these questions right now, but at 5 o'clock when our formal meeting comes to a close, we will be sticking around to take more questions. So there'll be an opportunity to raise those at that time. But thank you again for speaking with us. If you want to hang out and, stay on with us at 5, you can, or if you have to go off and save North Carolina, we totally understand. But in the meantime, I believe John is next and has something to say to us. So I'll turn it over to him.
All right, thanks, Aaron. So I want to talk about the letter team. So 31st Street has a letter writing team this year, and we're off to a great start. We have 116 members who volunteered last year, and another 41 who've signed on this year so far. We're not only from Metro DC, but also from Massachusetts, North Carolina, Vermont, New York, Oregon, and California, so coast to coast. A great benefit of letter writing is that it gives us the opportunity to participate in campaigns anywhere in the country. In a couple of days, we're going to finish our first letter campaign of the year in support of Tom Suozzi on Long Island, who's running to retake the congressional seat of the Honorable George Santos. Last year, 31st Street partnered with Working America to send letters to Wisconsin, Ohio, and Virginia, and we won in all 3 of those. We plan to partner with Working America again, though not exclusively. We'll be highly selective in choosing which campaigns we'll support, focusing on those where we think we can make a difference. That said, in this election year, there'll surely be plenty of worthwhile campaigns. So we're looking for additional campaigns and additional volunteers. If you have any campaigns to suggest or would like to volunteer, please email me or Roberta McInerney. We're the co-leads of the letter team, and I'm going to put our addresses in the chat in just a minute. Thank you. Over, back to you, Aaron.
Thanks, John. I think we're going to Julie now.
Actually, it's Julie and Peter Hansen.
Oh, okay.
And so 2 of us, because we're interested in reviving the 31st Street Facebook page. So we're having a discussion. I'm going to put the information to register in the chat on Wednesday, January 31st, 7 p.m. of the dual functions that we think the Facebook page could serve. One is to advertise 31st Street events, and Peter's interested in that lane. And the other is to do what, as you may remember, back in April, we had a Fighting the MAGA Media program, and Dan Pfeiffer advised activists to get louder. And being on Facebook is one way to do that, but it's not just going to be the old style of being on Facebook. This is going to be a new, more aggressive means of messaging that I've been doing research on. So I want to discuss that and see what interest there is in that. So I'm going to just turn it over now to Peter to anything else he'd like to say.
Yeah, let me just ask or say, basically, we'd love all of you to come talk specifically on the 31st, on the January 31st, about how we can make the Facebook page as useful as possible to you so that you can use it as a source of information to post to your friends and family. 31st Street has been on Facebook in the past. We're kind of resurrecting that now and hope to make it a useful hub for information for all of us. So if you have a chance, please join us on that Wednesday evening. It'll probably be about a 30-minute meeting or so. It'll be the same link that you used for this call today.
Oh, no, Peter, there's a registration link that I put in the chat.
My apologies.
Yeah.
But that will also be in the next newsletter that'll be out next week. So we look forward to seeing you then.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Julie. That's exciting. We had a Facebook page way back in 2017, but it has died a very sad death. So I'm really glad you're reviving it and bringing it into the future. So that is the end of our formal program, where we can now sort of an open mic for the last few minutes. But we are really appreciative of everybody who's come, and many of us will stick around for other questions or comments. And we will see you again at our next monthly meeting in February, but please look at the newsletters to see what we're doing, because we're doing a lot.
I still think we have a bit of time before 5. So I think Jessica's still here. So I think there are a few more questions in the chat, some of which she's answering. But could you comment on the pros and cons of supporting to the C3 group versus the C4 group? Jessica.
Yeah, absolutely. So from a donor's perspective, and I think y'all know this, C3 contributions are tax deductible, C4 contributions are not. So it just depends on your preference there. From a programmatic perspective, the C3s have a really specific role and lane in North Carolina, which is to make sure that underrepresented voters have access to our civic process, right? And so in North Carolina, underrepresented means mostly Black and brown voters and young voters. And so the C3s can carry a lot of the voter registration and get out the vote work in those communities. They cannot, however, advocate for or against specific candidates. The C4s can do that, and they do. So, you know, we like to think we are fairly sophisticated and smart about like what's the best and most strategic use of the C3 resources, what's the best and most strategic use of the C4 resources, and make sure they're aligned so that they work together.
Great. Should I continue moderating? Is that the best way to?
Sure.
Sure. Okay. Sandy, you have your virtual hand up. So did you want to unmute and ask a question?
Yeah. We've been talking a lot here about using media. I'm just wondering, you've talked a lot about educating youth, etc. How are you planning? How are you preparing to get that education, that information out?
In every possible way we can. So we've talked a little bit here today about the face-to-face conversations that we'll be having with people at their doors. We also, for the first time ever, I think, have secured some national resources to run a statewide campus engagement program. So that's going to fill a gap that we've had in North Carolina for most of the last decade. We're just not doing enough on college campuses, and I believe we will be able to this cycle. And then when it comes to online communication and other media, I didn't talk a lot about that today, but we have a great organization in North Carolina called Progress NC, and they hold all of our communications and digital organizing and advertising work. And so I'll just give one quick example. We're working with them right now and a coalition of 21 organizations as part of a coalition that we're calling Coalition Against Robinson's Extremism, or CARE for short. And that group meets every 2 weeks, and they're talking about earned media work and digital organizing and advertising around our governor's race, and also the presidential, but the primary focus is Robinson. So they're responsible for making sure we're in newspapers, we are showing up online, we are meeting voters in those communication spaces, right? So we honed in on field today, but it is a holistic approach to reaching voters.
Great. Okay. Boy, so much energy in the chat. I love it. If there's this much energy with our side in 2024, we are going to win for sure. The one question is there a place organization to channel our energy in Western North Carolina?
A great question. Western North Carolina, yes. So we do have a couple of partners who work there. One I would definitely recommend that you look up if you're not familiar with them. It's called Down Home North Carolina. Down Home does rural organizing in NC, and so they're not only in the West, but they also are in the eastern part of the state as well. And they build chapters of rural, working class, multiracial organizations in counties across the state, and they do issue advocacy, but then they turn their attention to elections as we get closer to election time. So I'd point to Down Home as probably my primary recommendation for that part of the state.
Great. Okay, Diane, I see you have your hand raised. Do you want to?
Yeah, thank you. I know you're trying to register a lot of people in North Carolina, and I just want to make sure you know about the group Field Team 6, one of my favorite groups. They have collected enormous amounts of information, and they have names and addresses and phone numbers and all kinds of things on people who are sympathetic to liberal causes but are not registered. And they're very happy to share that with groups. So if you want to contact them and see what they can do to pass you some information that would be helpful, that'd be great.
I appreciate that recommendation, Diane. Yeah, I'm a little familiar with their work, but I can definitely reach out to them. So thank you for that.
You betcha.
Great. I love the synergy. Okay, we have let's see what else. We have a question here from Yiping, and I'm not sure if this is for Jessica or for the group. Yiping, if you're still here, did you want to unmute and just maybe verbally restate your question? I wasn't sure I quite got it.
Yeah, thanks. I think it's really more for leadership rather than the group at large. So it was just kind of a random access thought that I had that I put out there. So I don't think we should waste the time for the group to get into it.
That's fair. Well, you know, you can always email us at the leadership, and I assume you know John, so you can funnel it through him.
Vaguely.
Aaron,
Okay,
somebody asked about the Democratic Party in North Carolina. So
Please.
let me answer that.
Okay, do you want to verbalize that question? Because the chat is scrolling by very fast. What is it?
Well, I think you can, Jessica, what do you think about the progress that the North Carolina Democratic Party is making? How would you assess, or how can you just elaborate on what you see is happening, realizing it's not your lane exactly?
Yeah, absolutely, Jim. So for those of you not aware, last year we elected a new Democratic Party chair. Her name is Anderson Clayton. She's the youngest party chair in the country. Last week was her birthday, so I have to update my talking point. She's 26 now. And what I really like about Anderson and have appreciated is that she has the heart and spirit of an organizer. So she is approaching her job as organizer in chief in North Carolina and really thinking about what's the long-term plan to build back the capacity of local parties to hold their leg of the stool, right? To use Jim's analogy from earlier. And so I have been really appreciative of that approach and the level of energy that she brings to the role. She's also from a rural part of North Carolina, and so one of her commitments is that, you know, we don't leave any part of North Carolina behind, which I also believe and agree with, like from a values standpoint. And so I think it's going well, but I do just want to just make sure people remember and are reminded that building infrastructure like this, it takes more than one cycle. And so Anderson alone is not going to be able to get the party back to a place where it can sort of do the enormous amount of work that has to be done to win a state of this size alone, especially not in 2 years. So it's a collective effort we're all going to have to lean in on. And for her, I think, you know, the goalpost is to see if we can breathe some life back into the party for 2024 and then keep building all the way to 2030. And I think she's on that track. So we feel good about it.
I liked your analogy about the white whale, that North Carolina is like the white whale. I always liken it to Lucy and Charlie Brown with the football. And, you know, we always think we're going to score and, you know, Lucy always pulls it away. One of the questions in the chat, though, is like, what are the lessons learned from Sherry Beasley's defeat? You know, she came so close. And, you know, it seems like there's been a number of these narrow misses. So you touched on it a little bit, I think, in your presentation, but maybe you want to chat about it now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the primary lesson I want people to take away from the Beasley race is that North Carolina, you know, y'all remember I showed you that slide at the beginning about how evenly divided our electorate is? That North Carolina is not the kind of state where we can go in halfway or where we can expect to do a good job of persuasion but leave mobilization off the table, or vice versa. It is a state where our electoral math is so close. The reality is we have to generate, in order to win, we have to generate really robust turnout among voters of color. And we also have to win the support of between 36 and 38% of white voters. And if you do one of those things, but not the other, you're going to lose. And in different cycles, we have seen the seesaw move in different ways. What happened in the Beasley race is that we pretty much hit the win number among white voters, I think primarily because of the abortion issue. And Black turnout cratered. And it cratered because there was not enough investment in a mobilization effort. Because the resources to do that weren't there. I told y'all that we had knocked on 1 million doors in 2022. Our colleagues in Georgia and Pennsylvania were resourced to knock on 5.5 million. So you can see just the difference in scale of what was being invested in North Carolina versus Pennsylvania and Georgia. And if we want the white whale, we have to seriously go after the white whale, right? Not to torture the metaphor, but that's the big lesson for me. And we are trying to do our part in state, right? We're raising as much money as we can in state. We are trying to build effective programs that can scale in state. Like, we're not shirking our responsibility there. We're doing everything we can to attract, you know, big Democratic national investment so we can get this done.
Great. Okay, are there other questions? I'll just invite people to raise their virtual hands, or I can't quite see you if you raise a physical hand. Oh, there's Judith. Judith, do you want to unmute?
Yeah, Judy, I put this in the chat, but I'm interested in how you work with other organizations. There's some other national organizations that have rural victory funds and are supporting different groups. I mentioned several of those in the chat. Do you have, some of us are most familiar with the Virginia Grassroots Coalition. Do you folks work together as a coalition? Do you think there's overlap? Do you think there is, or how do you focus to make sure everything is done in a coordinated manner, because they're supporting other, raising funds for other kinds of grassroots and voter empowerment groups. And I really want to focus funding on these groups.
The groups, yeah.
Not those
I
groups.
love that question, Judy, because I'm a nerd and this is my favorite part of my job. So I would say a couple of things. One, in state, the C3 organizations and the C4 organizations have coalitions, and they meet frequently to develop the plans that we've been talking about today. So I'll just use a quick example. We get together at the beginning of last year and we set a voter registration goal, that 190,000 forms. And then we figure out, of all the partners doing voter registration, who's going to be able to take what part of that plan, what geography, what constituency, what goals will they have. And I know all of that, and we put all of that in these very beautiful spreadsheets that I spend a lot of time looking at. And that allows me to then communicate effectively to national funders and groups like this about what the priorities and the gaps are for each of those organizations. And so I spend a lot of time working with national funding collaborations to help them figure out how to move their money into North Carolina, where it should be directed to reduce duplication, where it's most needed, depending on what month we're in an election cycle. And that's a big part of the role that I play in state. So I help coordinate the work in state, but I'm also sort of a conduit for national folks who are trying to move money into the state. Does that answer your question? Does that make sense?
Okay, who else? Oh, Rich, you have your actual hand raised. It's hard for me sometimes if your screen's not in my screen, I don't see it, but you can go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
So my question is anybody going to go down to the Supreme Court February 8th when they're going to be addressing the discussion of the 14th Amendment, whether Trump even gets on the ballot? I'm planning to go.
All right, well, if anyone would like to join Rich, you know where the Supreme Court is. You can join him.
Yeah, I mean, if we knock him off the ballot, I mean, it's a bit of a long shot, but two Federalist scholars, constitutional scholars, and the Federalists, of course, are the people who, all the conservative justices belong to. They came out with a paper after researching a year, 125 pages, and the conclusion was that the 14th, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment must, and be implemented. So, hoping against hope, I'm going to go down there.
We know where to go. We know what to do if you're interested in that. Jan, you have your hand up next. You're muted. Can you unmute?
I would like to ask if the Justice Riggs, I guess she's called, who is running for re-election, the Democrat, has an active campaign strategy and message, because my impression was that in the last election, the Democratic judicial candidates ran a very passive campaign, particularly compared to the activism of their Republican opponents.
Yeah, Jan. So Allison is from my side of the world, right? She ran a nonprofit organization before she was appointed to the court, and I can say with utmost confidence that she is going to run a spirited and aggressive campaign, and that she is going to make it very clear what the differences between herself and her opponent are. And I believe in 26, when Justice Anita Earls is up for re-election, that she will do the same, right? And I think that's a shift, right? Because it used to be that we had nonpartisan judicial elections, and they were sort of this genteel affair where you talked about fairness and we all remember those days. Those days are over, unfortunately, for democracy, but it is just a reality. And so I think having candidates that understand that and will campaign with that reality in mind is going to be really important. And I feel confident that Allison will do that.
Great. Okay, so we have a hard close at 5:15. So I see Barbara has a hand up and Mary has a hand up. So let's make those our last two questions for today. Barbara, do you want to go?
I just wondered, is there any sort of organization, is Courier News in North Carolina, or is there any similar sort of organization in North Carolina? Who is combating misinformation in North Carolina?
Absolutely. Courier does have a property in North Carolina. It's called Cardinal and Pine, if you want to look it up. We work closely with them, and Progress NC that I mentioned before is also doing that communications work and the work to combat misinformation. They have a media property called NC Voices, and both of them work together. They have a monthly comms table meeting where they talk about what needs to be conveyed, and it's it all operates in good alignment. So yes, both those things exist.
Thank you.
And Barbara, Kate Bassett said that they are hiring a content organizer for, in addition to the newsletter, they're hiring a content organizer for North Carolina, like we supported in Pennsylvania.
Good.
Wonderful. Glad to hear that. Mary, last question.
So Jessica, I'm aligning myself with Greg, who posted something about your wonderful slides in the chat. In particular, that slide that shows the breakdown of the North Carolina electorate. That is such a powerful slide. Would you be willing to share that slide and any other slides that that you don't think are proprietary, if that's the right word? We could attach them to the video of this meeting so that I especially love that one about the breakdown. Am I asking something out of line?
No, I can definitely do that. There are a couple I might want to pull out that are not for wider distribution, but most of them I can send along, and I'm happy to do that.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you to everybody who stuck around and just keep doing what we're doing. I think this is just such a fabulous turnout, such great energy, and yeah, the wind's at our backs. If everybody was like this group, our country would be in great shape. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you all.
Be a co-host. Be a co-host.
Be a co-host.